Okay, so let's start for today. Today is our, oh, sorry. Okay, let me try one more time.
Here.
Yeah. So you can see my screen, right? So today is our fourth time, and then we have spent 2 weeks talk about Socrates, and then last week we talked about general Platonic philosophy, and this week we should finish Plato's philosophy, and we will focus on Plato's politics. And the reading I post on the web page is the Plato's just state. So that's what we were going to start today. And I'd like to remind everyone, this one, we have a right size of people. We have 20 participants, and I think that's exactly a good number I like. Doesn't mean I don't want too many people, but so that's the right size. So encourage you to raise hand during the presentation, and then if I ignore for too long, you can just say hey, then I will stop for answer. But please focus on the question on the subject. Okay. So today we talk about Plato, and the next week we probably will spend 2 weeks talk about Aristotle, and then we will move back to the pre-Socratic philosophy. So this project, our hold on. Okay, this project we will focus on the this area, so-called the Greco-Roman philosophy, and the basics. The 3 areas we will focus is Athens, Asia Minor, and on the Sicily, Italian side. And right now we're still on Athens. So 3 philosophers we will deal is Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. And then this project, I try to focus on the book. Okay. So last week we talked about, basically we talked about symposium, Plato's dialogue, and Phaedrus. And this week, today, okay, I will focus on Plato's politics, so-called politics writing, or his just state. And the basics, I try to cover 2 dialogues. One is Republic, one is Timaeus. Okay. So it's, be honest, I don't think that's easy, because Republic has 10 books. Okay. So today we cover Plato's, and then we will move on to Plato. So before I start, and any question or anything, anybody want to talk about? Okay, so I will move on. So let's talk about Plato's writing. So Plato was born at 427 BC, and then when he was 43 years younger than Socrates, and he met Socrates at his age about 18 years old. And Socrates was killed, sentenced to death at the year 399 BC. And then Plato was about 38 years old. Yeah. And then so Plato's writing, we can separate as 3 areas. We call it early dialogue, which is before Plato was 40. Okay, so that's that Pythagoras, Apology, Crito, Eusebio, Gorgias. Okay, so this writing we consider as early dialogue. And then after Socrates' death, and Plato start to leave Athens, and he travel around the world. Okay, and for 12 years. When he come back, he found his school, academy. And during that time, he also write a lot. like Symposium, Phaedrus, Phaedrus, Parmenides, Republic. Okay, so all this one he was writing, we consider as middle dialogue. All right. So you can see the difference between early dialogue. The early dialogue, Socrates is the hero. Okay, he just talk, and he questioned everyone. So in the middle dialogue, you will start to see the voice, still Socrates talking, but you can see the voice become Plato's voice. So basically, we will assume the philosophy is not Socrates' philosophy. So if you are not speaking, please mute yourself. So that's the middle dialogue. And then I think between when Plato was 60 to 60 years old, he went to Syracuse, which is on the Italian side. He became educator. He tried to teach the king Dionysius II to become a philosopher king. Okay, so he spent 6 years over there, and then turned out the project failed. Then he came back to Athens. Then he started to write a lot to his death. So it's right. He died at 80 years old. So some dialogue we consider as later dialogue. That's the Timaeus, Philebus, Critias, Laws, Sophist, Statesman. Personally, I consider the later dialogue is very good dialogue. And unfortunately, not a lot of people pay attention on the later dialogue. And today we were going to focus on just two dialogues. One is the Republic, which is the most famous, and then Timaeus. So these two dialogues, that's what we are going to focus today. So Marcia, Marika, you have.
I have a general question about how much Socrates is in Plato's, because Socrates didn't write anything, and Plato's wrote most of his writing is dialogues with Socrates. So how much of the ideas of Socrates are in Plato's writing? I mean, do we know for sure that what he's saying that Socrates said is what Socrates said, or is always the ideas of Plato, and he used Socrates as the, like front for his ideas?
Yeah, okay. That's why I usually the scholars separate as early dialogue, middle dialogue, and later dialogue. So every dialogue, they have a person called Socrates who is speaking. Okay, so only the last dialogue, Laws. Okay, there's no Socrates' voice. Only a person called Athenian stranger. Okay, so that's the only dialogue has no Socrates' voice. So I will say every single dialogue they have the Socrates, but is that real Socrates? Okay, and I believe it's not. That's why the scholar will separate for the early dialogue, which probably Plato heard from Socrates. So we can consider that's Socrates' philosophy. In the middle dialogue, which is Symposium, Phaedrus, Parmenides, Republic, we are going to talk about Republic today. Here, Socrates talked a lot, okay, not just questioning the people. Socrates talked a lot, like a Republic, Socrates talked for Republic had 10 books, and I would say 90% is Socrates' monologue. So we would believe this one is Plato's philosophy. And to the end, the later dialogue, Socrates is still there, but Socrates only show up to ask two questions, then disappear. Okay, so Socrates only speak a few lines, and usually have other people speak. And to the last one, Laws, only Athenian stranger speak a lot. So Socrates kind of like disappear. So for sure, okay, the later dialogue is totally Plato's philosophy. So I hope I answer your question, Marshall. Okay, Marika.
Yes, thank you. But my question was that I'm sure that there was a lot of philosophers that they follow Socrates, and if they disagree with what Plato was saying, that Socrates was saying, was there any records that anybody was any discussion, or we take
we
for...
will discuss this one, and of course, nobody please see this one, and that's I want to ask everyone to think about, right? Not everybody agree with Plato or Socrates. Like Aristotle, we are going to deal next week. There's a few strong points Aristotle disagree with his teacher. So next week we will talk about Aristotle and the Socrates, Plato's student, and basically many points. You will see a lot of difference between Aristotle and Plato. So before I go to Republic, I would like to ask a few questions, okay? And we don't need to have answer. We can start to think about these questions. So first, okay, I think that's last week's question, right? Whitehead, famous quote is general characterization of the European philosophical tradition is that it consists of a series of footnotes of Plato. He considered Plato's influence is for the entire European philosophy. Okay, so what we are doing is just a footnote of Plato. But Whitehead student, Bertrand Russell, he treats a senior philosopher, I think he's especially in Plato, he considers as like a contemporary English or American advocate for totalitarians. Okay, that's in his history of Western philosophy. Basically, he's talking about Plato's Republic. That's what we are going to read today. And another person, Karl Popper, okay, I think in this week, reading in his Open Society and its Enemy, he also consider Plato's political writing is kind of commitment to Spartan-like regimentation of social life. Okay, so we will look at this one. So the question we would like to ask is Platonic state just or unjust? So is that possible, put Plato's utopia or so-called republic in practice? Or another way to look at is the question is republic, this dialogue, is about a state or just about a soul? That's a big question people are asking. When Plato talks about a state, does he really mean it's a state, or he just mean a soul? That's one way to look at. And another way to look at is even Plato talk about a soul. He probably talk about a state because Plato is a political figure. So doesn't matter how he talk, he is thinking about a state. So I think that's the question people has been discussing. And today, my purpose is I try my best to show what the republic is, and then you probably can tell me, it's Plato is talking about a soul or talking about a state. So before I really start, any question or any concern about the republic? Let's focus on the republic. Anybody has any reading about republic or take any lecture or anything? No? No second time? No third time? Okay. So I will continue. So republic is very long. Okay. So I try to put one or two slides for each book. So total has 10 books. Okay, so it's a lot. Just have to say it's a lot. And then I do my best to summarize. And then if you read Plato's, it's not easy. It's very long. So when I summarize, and I probably will miss something, and because I only can summarize what I think is important. And then you may not think that's important, and you may have something you think is more important. So you can interrupt if you say, hey, I think you missed this part, or if you read something. So that's the part I'd like to know. So start from book 1, like a tradition, right? Socrates start to ask a question. Okay, I think this one is writing not as a form of dialogue. It's right as a first person, I. Okay, the person say I, and I met what's his name? Glaucon, okay, who is Plato's brother, and Adeimantus, okay, he's another brother. So that I is Socrates. So this Socrates is monologue. He said, when I see Glaucon and see something, no Plato here, just Socrates, first person. So he just, so people sit down, okay, and start to discuss things. And Socrates, first topic, he's asking, what is justice? Okay, so Cephalus, the first answer, he talked about justice is legal obligation, being honest, that's the justice. Then just like as usual, Socrates started to challenge the answer. He said, well, a madman may legally own a weapon, right? So is that called justice? I think today we are in America, we all know how bad when a madman, okay, or mental disease, mental ill person own a weapon. Okay, so Polemarchus, okay, give another answer. He said, harm enemies and help friends. That's justice. Then Socrates started to challenge. He said, friends are not necessarily virtuous, and enemies may be virtuous. Okay, that's his challenge. Then here comes another person, Thrasymachus. Okay, he is a sophist. So he said, justice is the advantage of the stronger. So that means, if you are stronger, you have the say, and what you say is the power. So that's his idea. Then Socrates started to challenge this statement. He said, a just person is wise, not powerful. Okay, he's talking about person. Okay, a justice is about the rule, not the ruler. So he used a good example. He says, when we say a good medicine, right? Medical, we talk about medical treatment. We are not talking about the doctor. We are talking about the patient. Does the patient really benefit? Okay, not the doctor get benefit. So justice is not about the ruler, it's about the ruled. Number 3, justice is the virtue of soul. Okay, so here you will see when Socrates talk about, or Plato talk about justice, he's not only talking about the state, he also talking about the soul. Okay, that's the finish of book 1. Okay, I just try to make it simple. So then we can move to book 2. Glaucon, okay, Plato's brother, younger brother. He started to challenge Socrates' answer. He talked about justice is to avoid the punishment and gain reward. Okay, reward and punishment, that's justice. So he talked about a fable, a story, reign of Gyges, right? I think it's Gyges, reign of Gyges. If you see the Lord of Rings, they talk about this. So Glaucon talk about the story. Okay, say I think that's a very good thought experiment. Okay, he talked about a shepherd discovered a ring which make the wearer invisible. So he used this power and then to increase a personal advantage. So he seduced the queen of the kingdom and killed the king and become the ruler. So Glaucon concludes that even a moral person will eventually become immoral as long as he believes he cannot be punished for his action. So basic is the idea. I think that's a good thought, right? If you think about it, will you still be moral if you have this kind of ring? Okay, so that's Croton's challenge to Socrates. So Socrates answered. He said, justice is virtue, and the virtue has its own reward. In other words, being justice, being a just person, it already has a reward. You don't need the reward from outside. Okay, that's a Socrates statement. Then Socrates talked about the history of the human development. So he talked about 4 stages. And the first stage, it's a necessity. So people just like have a food, have a shelter, and they live the life, which the Croton called the city of pigs. So it just live like a pig. So that's the first stage. Then people start to gain wealth. Then you have the luxury city. Okay, so people start to hold more stuff and get more and more belongings. And that's why start to have war, because people are fighting for the resources. Then we will need the guardians, right? Everybody cannot be just like a pig. We need the guardians. Okay, so needed. So we need, I think he's talking about the situation in the essence at that moment. So number 4, the future development, he called the Cardinal. That means good city state. So that's the ideal situation. They will have political justice and individual justice. So that's the utopia. So in the end of book 2, Plato set up for the ideal state, which is republic, Cardinal, and not only the state is justice, okay, and individual, every individual also just. I think that's he tried to set up on the book 2. So question and comment for book 2. So then let's move to book 3. Okay. So here, Plato or Socrates start to talk about education. Since we are setting up the ideal state, Cardinal, then we have to talk about education. And this, I think, when the another writing in another dialogue, Laws, Plato has much more detail about education. But here is the first time Plato is talking about education. So he talk about education, 4 things. First, physical training. Okay, the purpose of physical training is for the warfare, because war, okay, always in his mind. Second, musical training, okay, because that's the harmony, so you can avoid the savage. Okay, so and the medical training for everyone, because you want to keep your body health. So remember, the medical training is for the body, music training is for your soul, put this way. And then love, you have to encourage love. Use love or eros. It's the one to bridge the physical world and the intelligible world. So that's Plato's training idea. Then he started to talk about a myth of metals. And this one we can call it a lie, a noble lie, because that's receive a lot of criticism here. Plato or Socrates, the ideal state has 3 classes. It's not all men equal. Okay, so they have the ruler, or you want to call guardians. They have the auxiliaries, which you want to call soldier, okay, or warrior, and they have the producers. So they have the 3 kinds of people, because they want to set up 3 classes of people. So during that time, or probably still the same, the Western tradition, when we talk about cardinal virtues, 4 cardinal virtues, we talk about justice, wisdom, courage, and temperance. So these 4 cardinal virtues were built in the three different classes. For the entire society, we want to achieve the justice. Okay, so that's the highest goal. For the ruler, guardians, what virtue they need, require most, is wisdom. Okay. For the soldiers or auxiliaries, okay, they require the virtue requirement is courage, and for the producer is temperance, so they can control themselves, will not go over. And to set up this kind of society, Socrates or Plato have to tell lies, or so-called noble lies. They call it the myth of metal. They talk about the soul was built when the God made the people, and they make a soul first, then make the body. And they have the three kinds of material: iron, silver, and gold. Some people are made, or the soul are made of iron. Some people's soul are made of silver. Some people's soul are made of gold. Then you got the three different kinds of people. And that's the people are different. And that's why he want to build in the three different class of people. Okay. Miriam, please.
Yes, I wondered if this education was applied to women as well as men.
Yes, applied to women. I'm very sure. He talked about this.
Thank you.
Yeah, we will talk about this. And of course, we know, Plato or Socrates, they don't respect the woman. But in this education, they treat the woman equally. Okay, thank you for this question. Yeah. Okay, so we finished book 3. Okay. And let's go to book 4. Okay. Basics, book 4, is kind of repeat. If you were here last week, we talked about figures, which is sword, tripartite sword. Okay, so he repeats this story. Okay, and he recalls this story about sword. In Socrates or Plato's sword is a 3-part. Okay, his allegory or story is it's a charioteer controlling 2 horses. One is so-called noble horses, the spiritual horse, and another one is appetitive soul, which is ignoble. So you have to use your rationality to control this horse. Okay, so this one is famous. Later on, become Freud, the id, super ego, and ego. This kind of concept. So that's Plato's tripartite soul idea with a charioteer with 2 horses. So right now it's going to build the justice. It also means the health of soul. So you can see before we talk about a state, which is justice, and with the 3 class of people. If you look at 3 class of people, and the gold is made of the ruler, the silver is for the auxiliaries, and the iron is for producer. And here, the Plato go back to your soul, right? So the soul for the individual soul and the state, which also need to be just. So your rational part of soul, you need the wisdom. So you lust for truth, and just like a guardian, right? And then your spiritual soul is lust for honor, just like auxiliaries. So you need the courage. And your appetitive soul is lust for sex and the food and anything, the basic need. So they can become a producer. And the virtue you need is temperance to control this. So that's book 3 and the book 4. Plato start to bring the state and the soul together. A just state is a just person, also means a healthy soul. That's the idea. So then we finish book 4. Okay. Any question or comment? Otherwise, I will move to book 5. And Maria, please.
Yes, I find it interesting that spirituality is linked to the lust for honor.
Yeah.
Just because that's not how I would think of, I don't think of that spiritual quality at all. I think that that's, well, ambition is often rather earthbound.
I think I don't have a clear answer to you. Be honest, when these 4 virtues, justice, wisdom, and courage, and the temperance, we should read another later dialogue, Philosopher. They talk a lot. It's it's not what we think of just as a courage. The courage is a mental state. Let me give a quick example. When we talk about courage, he probably talk about something like, for example, you are thinking about eating some unhealthy food, and then you try not to eat it because it's not healthy. He called this courage. You may see that's a temperance, but he called this kind of thing temperance, courage. So I'm not trying to explain in the detail, but I just let you know, your thinking is very reasonable because it's a lot of things. It's not what we think today. Yeah. And another thing, the purpose he doing here is Plato tried to link the just state and the just soul and the healthy soul all together. So that's his purpose.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And then
Sounds very interesting.
okay, thank you. So I think that you can read the Plato dialogue interest. You will find its interest. If you be a little bit open-minded. So let's go to the book 5, which is most famous, talking about the Philosopher Kings. Okay, so since we talk about just state and the just soul, okay, then we have and then all kinds of virtues. They all line up together. Okay, let's assume you are convinced. So the leader, right, the guardian, he called Philosopher Kings. Okay, so he never been very clear. Plato never been clear on Philosopher Kings is how many or. But he talked about their life. Okay, we will assume it's guardian, the highest level, the soul made of gold. So he talked about, okay, I just answer the question from, is it Marika or Maria, about the woman. Okay, so women and men will be trained together. Okay, but the difficult part here, the spouse and children are separate. Okay, so they live as communal life. So sexual intercourse are allowed only in a certain period of time of the year. Okay, so
Interesting.
yeah, it's just like animal, we put this way. And even the tough more part I didn't include here is he talked about if the children were born out of season would be killed. Okay, so the reason they believe a certain season is a good time to produce a good offspring. Okay, that's Plato's idea. Okay.
I have a question. I'm sorry.
Amy, please.
Children of guardians must join wars for testing? What does that mean?
Oh, okay. Yes, I will go have more detail. Okay, so they test whether or not they are courage. They have enough courage. They are suitable for fighting.
Okay, because I got scared. It was like another,
Oh
Like
yeah,
Hitler.
sorry, I didn't. I just write quickly. I didn't make
Yeah.
it. Thank you for asking. Thank you for asking. Yeah.
Yeah, because the Hitler with the twins, remember?
Yeah. So basically, they have to join the war. Okay. So basically, Plato want to get rid of the private property and the concept of family. So that's the part Aristotle totally disagree when Aristotle write his Politics. Okay, he said against republic because just opposite to what Plato is talking about. Aristotle is talking about the ideal state. Polis should use family as a foundation. So you have a family, community, and grow up. That's Aristotle's idea. But Plato is talking about no wife, no husband, and the parents, no kids. And he go very detailed, okay, and I'm including here because he had to avoid incest, right? Because since you don't know who is your father, your mother, and you don't know who is your brother or your sister, so you have avoid. So I think he has a complex way to avoid, okay, the incest. I think it's go to very complex. Okay, so basics, he's talking about the process of select philosopher kid. So basics, you will select the babies with the proper aptitude for training. Okay, so you select the ideal, healthy, smart babies. Okay, as you know, during that time, it's common for in Greek, they just throw away the unhealthy baby. That's a common practice. They just get rid of unhealthy baby. They only keep the healthy baby. But here, Plato want to do is further select good potential babies for training. Okay, so they all live in the communal life. So they don't know who is your father, your mother. So they will join the Philosopher King training program. Okay, they will have more detail on the Philosopher King training program. So here's the book 5. We talk about the Philosopher King, the concept of philosophy coming here. Question, comment? Okay, so
I have one.
Amy.
I just want to know if I have, all right, for instance, Jean-Paul Sartre.
Okay.
Is any of his beliefs Plato or no?
You mean Sartre, the French Jean-Paul Sartre, right? I think he did develop his philosophy from Plato's form, idea and form. And I don't see, I don't see him talk about Plato's Republic. Okay, that's my answer. Okay. Unless he reads Plato's Republic as talking about soul, not talking about the politics. So book 6, okay, that's a famous sun that's misspelled, S-U-N, sun metaphor. We talk about sun. Okay. So basically, sun is the source of the light. So he compares sun and the good. Right? The good is the source of intelligibility. So sun is responsible for giving us sight, and the good is giving us the capability of knowledge. So that's a one-to-one comparison. And the sun is responsible for the existence of everything, flower, animal, because you need the sun to grow and grow food. And the good is responsible for the existence of form, idea, and the form. So for example, Plato talking about everything has its idea or forms, and the good itself is the source. So that's his comparison. In the sensible world, we have sun, so we can see everything grow here. In the intelligible world, the good. So when we talk about good, he's not talking about a good thing, a good behavior, a good person. He talks about the good itself. So the good itself is the source of form or idea. Okay, so and everything. So that's the knowledgeable world. So that's Plato is talking about the intelligent. Okay, how do we know epistemology? So here get more complex. So he draws so-called the line metaphor. He draws the line. Okay, so because the sound is from A, B, C, D, E. Okay, so on the first part, that's our sensible word, and which have a conjecture and belief, that's this distance. And on our intelligible word, we have understanding and reasoning. Okay, these two parts. So depending on what kind of people you are, the distance of A, B, B, C, C, D, D, E, they can change. So your opinion depends on the number, okay, the belief divided conjecture. Okay, the more you believe, the stronger opinion. And your knowledge depends on the thought, which is written, and your understanding. So that's his life metaphor. And the reason he said that this is going to his famous allegory of cave. So I think here we finish book 6, we're almost 50% done for the Plato's Republic. So here I showed last week, and that's the same thing. I think this picture is pretty good. He tells a story, another story, allegory of cave. Okay, so he said, most of people, when we see daily life, we see just opinion. Okay, just particular. We kind of like people being chained in a cave, and when we see just the shadow, okay, from the outside. Okay, so we see this one, and then we see the horse, people, birds, everything, and then we think that's the real world. Until one person get off the shackles, he run out, he see the fire, he see the horse, and this one, he said, oh, that's not the real thing. What we have seen every day, just a shadow. That's the real thing. But Plato is telling us the situation is even more than this, because what you see, even you escape from this one, you still in the cave. That's our empirical world. So this person running out to outside, okay, he see the real world. He see the sun, and he see the real horse, he see the real tree. Then he start to know, wow, that's the real world. Then he come back to tell people, but it's very hard for people to believe. So this allegory of cave basically is telling us that's very important for Plato's epistemology. He talk about the empirical world. The whole world is here. Our daily life, everybody just being chained to see the shadows, and he received the opinions, but he thinks the opinion is true. Only the smart person get out of the chain and see the real world. He see, oh, he can see that's real. Just like a scientist, educated person, they see the truth, okay, the true knowledge. But Plato just tells us, no, that's not true. That's just empirical. You see a dog, you see a cat, you see a tree, you see a river, you see a lot of people. That's just empirical world. They have the form, the ideal form. You have to get out of this and see the real world, which is the true truth. So that's Plato's allegory of cave. Okay. So that's on book 6. Okay. So before we move on, so I will pause for question or comment. Howard, please.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that I know it's only an analogy, but even that is kind of a hierarchical analysis, because to understand the cave, I mean, the cave is a world in itself as well. Yeah. And if you only spend your time out in the sun, you wouldn't understand the world of the cave. So, so in other words, it's the understanding of the world is actually understanding of particular worlds. So the people that live in the world of opinion understand that world in a way that a philosopher doesn't as well. That's
yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah. Claire, please.
Yes, I'd like to know how would somebody know if they see the real thing or shadow or something that caused shadow, and who can prove to them?
Yeah, that's a tough question. Anybody have an answer? That's why we need to join Plato's Philosopher King training. Okay, so we will talk about this one in 2 books later. He has a philosopher. He has a training program. All right, to let you know, to grow you up on that. And I believe 80%, 90% may see it's not reasonable, impractical, but that's Plato's idea. Okay, so let's move to the book 7. Okay, so that's the one. Okay, so just to answer Claire's question. Okay, so Philosopher King training program. Okay, so first, okay, so before you do that, not everybody is able to escape. Okay, so most of people just chant together, just chant and see the particular word and then receive the opinion. Okay, so remember, if we in the manuals, Plato talked about the knowledge, the innate knowledge, only certain kind of people. All right, so depend on your soul. So start from the selecting the right babies. Okay, so the first 20 years training is focused on mathematics, geometry. Okay, so that's the important training. So in the 20 years, they will choose the good student, good performance. Then they will start for another 10 years philosophical training. So you have learning all kinds of knowledge. Then for another 5 years, okay, they will still to select the good one, the good potential dialecticians. Okay, so they will do the dialectic training. So basic training on reasoning, on thought. Remember, it's not on sensation, so it's on the thought. Okay, that just answer the question. Okay, how do you know you are in the real world or you are in the empirical world? That's the training, dialectic training, training on thought. You have to avoid the sensation. You focus on your thought, logic. That's what we have to do. For 5, when the baby, or not baby anymore, when the people, the candidate reach 35 years old, that's just answer the question. They join wars. They have to join the wars and the politics to get more experience. And of course, the person are not courage, or unlucky or got killed, whatever. So basics to the 50 years old, they will start to choose the steadfast, loyal, and the wise people, become the philosopher kings. And these philosopher kings will rule or lead the state. And they also responsible for educating the next generation from the class of guardian and auxiliaries. So basically, that's very hierarchical society. Only the guardian or auxiliary level, okay, can do. And after you die, you'll be worshipped as demigods. So that's his training program. And the book 8, okay, here Plato started talking about more politics. Okay, so he talked about why we need this kind of state, polis. Okay, he talked about the democracy, the starting point. Democracy, I think the word means ruled by the nobles. Okay, so, and at that time, nobles probably means virtuous. So the virtuous people, the noble person, okay, rule the state. And then he said that because sometimes ruled by wrong people, not philosopher king, they will become oligarchy. Okay, so you become ruled by the rich. And then the state just split, right? Become rich people, city of rich, and the city of poor. And then oligarchy will kind of decline to democracy. Okay, because then the poor, because the poor will start to have a revolution, and democracy will turn to tyranny. That's what we try to avoid. Okay, So I think when we read Aristotle, we will see similar analysis, but a little bit different way. So we'll move to book 9. We almost finished the Republic. Book 9. So going back to individual, Plato or Socrates here talk about. So the democratic men, they are looking for honor. But when they decline to the oligarchic men, they become thriftless, okay? Thriftless. And they become democratic men. They start to desire, have unnecessary desire. And they will decline to tyrannical men, which is lawlessness. So here, he make a very interesting concept. He talk about become a tyrant. Actually, the tyrant himself suffer the most, okay? Tyrant is not the person who enjoy, okay? Because philosopher king, they enjoy they have the real happiness. He talking about the just life is present, itself is present, like philosopher king is happy. And the tyrant suffer, that's what he's talking about. He even have a calculation. He said a just man is 729 times happier than a tyrant. So please don't ask me why have a 729. I see some paper discussing this, and it's difficult, and we don't know. And I'm sure in the original text, Socrates didn't explain how. He just say this one, and Grogan say, "Wow, that's a wonderful number." Okay, and
Interesting.
Socrates and Plato really like numbers, and in laws, he even talk about the ideal state shall have 5,040 citizens for each state. But here, that one, he explained why 5,040. Because 5,040 can be divided by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you can group in any way you want. So 5,040 people are the right size. That's his explanation. But here, 729, only thing I can think about is 3, the power of 6. Okay, so why this way? I don't know. So basically, he want to do is want to tell everyone, I don't know you are convinced or not. Okay, I hope you are, but the tyranny himself suffered. Okay, the philosopher king is happier. Okay, so that's what he want to say. So for the book 9.
Oh, so 222 had something to do with him, right?
Maybe
222, the numbers.
222. I don't see the number 222.
Okay, because that's angels.
Oh, that's not. They don't talk about angel. I think you missed.
Oh, okay, got it.
Thomas Aquinas. That's angelology. Okay.
Oh, he's
That's
against
another story.
Roche. Love it.
Okay,
Jason,
so-
Jason, I have a quick question on. Could you put the 9 card up again?
Okay,
Chapter
this
9
one.
card. No.
Okay, this one.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, as you've been doing this, I've been trying to hold that dual image of both the state and the individual, right?
Yeah.
And so my question is, like, oligarchic man thriftiness, would that translate to like uncharity, non-charitable?
I think here he's not talking about charity. He talk about he's talking about the democratic man because who rule
Right.
the noble,
But
the bourgeois.
oligarchic man, though.
They become the rich people rule the poor people, right?
Oh,
Right,
okay.
but I think of oligarchic as like almost hoarding, which requires lack of charity. Just to go down this, so democratic man, unnecessary desires, they start to model the oligarchy that they've overthrown. So they become immodest in their desires.
Yeah,
And
I think you are right.
So that's what I'm saying. I'm seeing both the soul and the state in those terms, right?
Yes. Okay. But
Okay.
here he more. I think during that time on the African side, there's some state basic. Their system is oligarchy. Okay, so the rich people will rule. Okay, so there's no. I think in Aristotle have a more detail talking about this kind of and personally, I don't see this one so convincing, but Aristotle's politics are much more convincing.
Right.
I modify this one, yeah.
But I'm seeing parallels, I think. I mean, thriftiness threw me off because, I mean, thrifty is someone I think of as really sensible with goods and funds, but.
Oh, I get it. It's another way to talk about, right? The whole. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. I think you are right. Probably I should use a different word. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, rather than thriftiness, that was throwing me off a bit.
Yeah. Thank you for this. Yeah, because that's probably not the right word to choose. Probably should call it a holder or something like this. Yeah.
Somebody who wants all the goods.
Yeah, he wants all the goods. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just wondering if I was misunderstanding. Thank you.
No, you don't. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and then thank you for remind me, because when we use language, we're only one-sided. So we only look at, especially me, okay, only see one side. So that will you will respond and tell me how do you think will help me. Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank you.
Anyway, okay, so we almost finished. I think it's an amazing job because it's 10 books. It's a lot. Okay, so book 10. Okay, this one is interest part. Okay, he talked about and he talked about tyrant. Then right now he talked about poetry. Okay, so Plato is a good poet writer, but he is against the poetry tradition, Greek poetry tradition. So he said, poets pretend they know all things, but they don't. Poetry imitates the worst part of the soul, the appetitive soul, and not the rational soul. So only dialogue are the good, because they are talking about the rational part. Unlike poetry, talk about appetitive soul. Okay, so that's not good. And he said, poetry deceives us, okay, into sympathizing with those who grieve excessively, lust inappropriately, and laugh at the base thing. So basic idea, no poetry. Okay, and then I think his idea, sometimes it's difficult to understand, but his idea is, let's think about this idea. The logic is this. When we see a dog, a person, basically that's a copy from the idea or form. So the real world is already, remember the cave, the world that we see is already a copy from the form or idea. And the poetry or drama is a copy from the real world. So it's a double copy. So his question is, why don't you see instead of going up to see the idea and the form, you're going down to make another copy, okay, from the low end. So that's not good. That's why he is against poetry. And unlike Aristotle write a book called Poetic. Basically, we can consider as his argument against Plato's idea. So Plato, this dialogue finished with another myth of Earth. Okay, so talk about Earth was a man who died during the battle, and he was led to a place where they were judged and decide the soul. So he talked about afterlife, because Earth's body was undecomposed for 10 days, and he didn't drink the water from the riverless. Riverless is the water you drink and you forget everything before you go to your next life. So 2 days later, Earth come back and tell the story of afterlife. So we talk about a murder, tyrant, they go to the underworld forever. Good soul, go to the nice place, and the soul can choose, what's your next life. And before you drink the water from the waterless, and some people drink a lot, some people only drink a little bit. That explain why some people kind of remember their previous life, and some people totally unknown about this. And then usually people will choose the lesson you learn from your previous life and then you will make a choice what kind of life you want to go. And some people decide to become an animal. Some animal decide to become a people. And he told the story, a tyrant, a person want to become a dictator, and then turned out that he ate his own son, and he suffered. So blah, blah. So that's the end with a myth of soul. That's he talk about. So basics, that's the story is of Plato's 10 books, Republic. So big $1,000 million question is, what is Plato talking about? Is he talking about a soul or talking about a state? So I will pause for 1 minute and 5 minutes, 10 minutes, if you want to idea you want to share, or how do you think?
And what is Plato talking about? Soul? I think soul, no?
It
No,
is,
soul
yeah.
is,
Okay, that's fine.
I think soul is more poetic.
Okay.
Poetry.
I can see the parallels, and it occurs to me as we're talking about this that the two are cycles of each other, right? Without soulful people, or without the virtues he was describing, you can't have a virtuous state, and without a virtuous state, you can't have virtuous people.
Thank
So
you.
they're part of a cycle. Am I totally off base with that?
No. Actually, it's a totally, it's an open question. I don't see anyone have. You see, at the beginning, I posed, people have the two different kind of opinion, right? Some people think that Plato's philosophy usually mean Republic is great, okay? Because usually this kind of people think about it's a soul, okay? Even he talk about state. Think about the state, they have the guardian, they have the soldier, they have the producer. That's our people, that's not state, okay? The training program, okay? Sounds like, you have to kill the bad baby. No, that's not the real baby. They talk about the bad idea. You should get rid of that. That's one way to think about that. Okay.
Yeah, I don't see it as an either or. I'm able to hold on to it as a both and.
Yeah, I think so. That will be a fair statement. And the personal experience at beginning, I really hate Republic. I think Republic is terrible. Okay, and totalitarian. But after someone explained to me, I think, that if I look at it as a soul, I can understand. But later on, when I read later dialogue talking about the laws and talk about Tiberius, I start to not believe Plato is talking about soul. I believe Plato is talking about state, okay, and which I dislike again. But I can look at it in a different way. So
I think I see it more. I think I see it as more symbiotic, or not either or, but both and, more as at this age than I did when I was first introduced to all this. I think there's a difference between being a young person and reading this and being a, shall we say, a senior citizen reading this. I can see a larger playing field now than I saw as a young person.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that this personally, I think the Symposium and the Republic is worth to read again and again. Of course, reading from the word to word is very difficult, take a long time. But you can read the summary or get pizza, and then you will have a different opinion every time. That's my experience. So,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And
I'm just looking up. Yeah.
okay, so hold on. We have a few.
Oh, I just wanted to tell you.
Amy, can you hold?
Okay.
Okay, let's have V, and Howard, and Fred. V, please.
Thank you so much. I see it slightly more as concerned with the state. I say it's, in my opinion, it's about 60% state and then the rest soul. And the reason I say that is because he's talking more about the organization of people in general, as opposed to the individual people. However, I want to include the soul as well, because I see a state metaphorically like a human body. We can't take the cells, the individual cells, away from our body. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a body at all. So without keeping in mind that the state is encompassed and includes the individual soul, even if it's in this point, like the planet, we have about 7 billion people, a little bit more than that at this point. So I think, it's almost 50-50, but slightly more state, because he doesn't talk much about the individuality perspective. Thank you so much.
You. Yeah, thank you. And then don't forget, after he write this one, Plato went to really to set up a utopia, right, for the King Dionysus II. Okay, so he really tried to work on that, and so it's hard for me to believe he's only talking about soul, not really political. And then in his latest dialogue, The Laws, he is not talking about Philosopher King anymore. He's talking about the law. Okay, so that's why I kind of think about Plato is political. So, but again, I may change later. But anyway, how is?
Yeah, I tend to agree with V that the emphasis is on the state, but definitely they're mutually interdependent. You can't have one without the other, really, because the individual is influenced by the state and the state is composed of the individuals. But the key is that he doesn't really believe in freedom. He believes in that he's found the way that humans actually function best, and that's the way that therefore the state should be designed, and the state therefore effectively creates the individuals that are going to function the best and be happiest, because he doesn't believe there's any other way to do it. And I also think that his assessment of the different forms of rule, you can actually see that playing out currently. Like we in the West, we have a tension between democracy and oligarchy, although a lot of people don't even believe that. A lot of people believe we're just democratic. But it's fairly clear, especially in the last 30 years, that we've moved to an oligarchy based on wealth and property. And I think he probably experienced a similar thing so long ago. So it tends to support, it's evidence to support his argument, to say that, you get, things have good features. All forms of government have appealing features, but in the end, they have a tendency to have bad outcomes. So, for example, in other words, democracy, people hold that as the highest ideal. Whereas, I don't want to offend anyone, but we've got a problem at the moment in terms of people won't respect science on the one hand, and believe in the democracy of anyone having an opinion and being able to, without expert participation, can just fling about any argument and therefore bring down scientific consensus. On the other hand, we do have problems with scientific consensus isn't infallible, and that becomes evident to the people in the democracy. So you do have that tension, and you can look at where we are now in either way to see those problems which he actually observed in his own society. Just one other thing, if I may, his idea about eugenics. I'm in Australia, but I do listen to a lot of American media, and recently heard something which maybe a lot of you guys in the USA know about, the forced sterilisation program, which was in place from the 1920s right up to the 1970s at various stages, which resulted in hundreds of thousands of people being sterilized because they were judged to be unfit. And that was across the USA in most states. And it was originally supported by a lot of scientists. So that's something to consider as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that Howard also in the Western philosophy reading group. Yeah, Bertrand Russell really don't have a good word about Plato. So, but we have to remember, first Plato he see the 30 tyranny rule, right? And then he see the recovery of democracy. And this democracy killed his teacher. So he must think a lot on this kind of situation. Is tyranny, he doesn't want it. Democracy, good or not good, even this system killed his teacher, okay? And he has to run away for 12 years because he is in danger. So a lot of things he is thinking. So of course, whether or not he has a bad influence, okay, we can talk about one thing. Another thing is we can understand his mental state during that situation. And personally, I believe the political issue is always in his mind.
Just one other thing, sorry, just a quick one. Our democracy being a capitalist consumerist democracy has actually led to a lot of the excesses that he was warning about. So people are actually consuming far too much, which we know that now. Though there's a general consensus we're consuming far too much for the sake of the planet, let alone our own mental and emotional health and our intellectual health for that matter too. So you can see that play out as well.
Yeah, thank you. Fred, please.
Yeah, my remark gets back to the question raised about solar state, and I think B is right that it's more state than soul. I would probably put it more like 80% state, 20% soul, but that's a real important 20%, because one of the distinctions is that the ideal state or Kallipolis that Plato presents is recognized by Plato as ideal and probably not realizable in our life. However, he says that it serves as a good model for building a polis within yourself. And so in that sense, it's mostly about the state, almost entirely about the state. However, he says, but we probably can't do this in society. However, whether we can or not, this is something that you can build within yourself, and you can do that.
Yeah, thank you, Fred. I agree with you. And then when I really like, his last dialogue, the laws, okay, because that one is more, of course, the terrible idea is still there. Okay, you have to forbid something, the terrible idea is still, but he become more practical. He talking about set up a new state and in Crete, and then that's 12 books, much longer than this, and I think that's interesting. He become more practical in his later age. And he is not talking about Philosopher King anymore. So, Amy, you still have a comment?
You know what? I'm just looking up all this information that he felt with the soul. It was only spirit, appetite, and reason.
Mm-hmm.
And he believes that philosophers should be the ones who hold positions of power. That's what I just looked up. So, it's just so interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then I think I also like to remind everyone, Plato, during that time, when he talk about, we can call him, totalitarian, authoritarian government, authoritative government, or totalitarian. But remember, during that time, he is not thinking about the Russian Empire, Chinese Empire, Persian Empire. He think about a state, 5,040 people kind of state. Okay, so that's very different than we talking about 1 billion people or 200 million people. I think that's very different. So I think we have another 10 minutes. I would like to make a quick go through another dialogue, Timaeus. Okay, and then probably I'm not going to go to the detail. I just want to, the reason I bring this one is it's very interesting, the Timaeus. Okay, first, Timaeus probably the only Greek philosophy available during the probably the 2nd century in Roman. Okay, because they all lost. They don't know Aristotle, and then when they talk about Plato, they talk about Timaeus. This one because Cicero make a translation on this. So that's the only one they read. So I probably don't have time to introduce this one in detail, but when we read the Neoplatonic philosophy, basically you will see it's a repeat on this one, and then go to more detail, and eventually this one connect with Christian philosophy. So that's the number one. I think that's important. Number two, I find it's interesting is Plato wrote Republic. It's 15 years, at least 15 years earlier than Timaeus. So during this period of time, oh no, I'm sorry, 5 years, at least 5 years. We don't know how many years, but at least 5 years, 5 to 6 years. During this 6 year, Plato went to Syracuse and tried to set up an ideal state, but he failed. Then he come back and he start to write a lot of later Plato dialogue. So Timaeus is one of them. And when Timaeus started, okay, they started with dialogue. Socrates say 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, he counted the people, and then he said first is Timaeus, Critias, Heraclitus. 4. Who is the number 4? Who were there yesterday? Okay, we don't know. We never know who is number 4 people. And Timaeus said he was sick, so he didn't come. So Socrates started to talk about yesterday. We talk about the ideal state. So Timaeus, even written 5 or more years later, is set up in the stage, the 2nd day of Republic. So Socrates talk about this one, he's talking about the story. Okay, we already talked about Republic, which is the ideal future Callipolis, okay, ideal state. Let's talk about the nature situation. Okay, so he started to ask them to explain what's going on in the nature. So there's a 2 story. One is the nature state, which is Critias going to talk about. That's the next dialogue. And unfortunately, that dialogue is lost. So no, the dialogue is unfinished, not because Plato didn't finish, because the final part are lost. So we don't know what they are talking about Critias. Okay, but we have this one, Timaeus, talking about the creation of universe and the generation of man. So the Genesis story. So Timaeus is going to talk about Genesis story. And the Timaeus, who is Timaeus? Timaeus is the Pythagorean astrology or astronomer. Okay, so he is talking about this idea, and then how does the world start? So basically, he's talking about start from. You will see this one. It started from 1 and the idea and the form, and then go start the word soul, and then you have a 4 element, and then word is created then created the word, and then created the image of time, and created the star, and the step by step, just like Bible's Old Testament, the Genesis story. So you will see, for example, during that time, there idea of this world is Earth center, right? We are Earth and the 7th planet, and which is that's the Earth, and that's the Moon, that's the Sun, and the Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, and the Saturn. Okay, then they have a star. So they talk about how does this one star and the four elements, right? The fire will create the heavenly body, which is God. And then they have the air will create the birds, and the water create the fish, and the earth, that's the then animal. So they keep going on, and then you will see Plato's geometry, mathematical training come to play here. He talked about the 4 elements is interchangeable, so all created by the right triangle. So basics is from water. They have the so-called icosahedron. That means 12 right triangle, okay, make it a solid. So when they decompose, change, it will become air. That's octahedron, okay. So that's the 8 different 8 triangle. Then will become fire, which is tetrahedron, like a pyramid, okay. And the earth is not going to change with other things. So that's all his ideas going on, and then how to create a human body, and then go a bunch of number, times soul and the body. So that's the story of this one. And I think I will find a proper time to introduce this one. And then I probably want to call to finish for today's presentation. And let's leave a few minutes if you want to discuss, and then you have any question, on this one. And today I try to do is the last day for the Plato, because it's not good to talk too long about Plato. So next week, I'm going to start with Aristotle, and that's get a different, fresh idea. And I plan to use 2 to 3 weeks to talk about Aristotle, for next 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So any question, comment, suggestion, let's have a few minutes,
It's interesting, the fire, air, water, earth business. It's almost like, aromatherapy and all that jazz. They believe in that too.
Yes,
The
actually,
chakras.
this I didn't go the detail. If you can go, we can go very long about. He used these 4 elements to explain everything. The world, also human feeling. For example, he talked about human body also built with these 4 elements. So the element will change. So if you have all the elements go to the right place, you feel happy, pleasure, comfortable. If the element like water will change to air, air change to fire, if you have a sudden change, that's why you feel pain. Okay. Some people have a tempo, different, angry. So everything have a reason. They use these 4 elements to explain.
Yeah, interesting. I enjoyed your class. I really did.
Thank you. Thank you. I try not to pick this one as a lecture or class, and I try to make this one a more discussion. And thank you, Amy, to jump in to ask question, because I really like to have a question, because just like I said, not only myself, even Plato, his writing is only one side, okay? And you only express something in what you can see, and always have a blind side. And I require, I depend on you to tell me, what's the question, which part is not reasonable. So we
yes.
So any other question or